I think people would be rather daunted if they saw a bit of pasture and they try and picture how to get from that to a wood. So this book deliberately sets out to demonstrate how straightforward it is really to get from a bit of virgin land to the beginnings of a woodland. My name's Anthony Mason. I'm a writer, the author of Tree Planting, How to Create a Woodland. You'll have in your mind's eye maybe the kind of mature woodland that you want to produce, and there's a way of getting there by planting the trees that you're going to plant in that land. An area of about 4 to 5 acres is kind of ideal for a small woodland. So first thing to do is to know your bit of land and to see its shapes and its contours and the compass directions, so you know where the sun is going to rise and fall, and where the wind's coming from, and all those kind of things. We advise people then to make a little sketch map, and on that map you'll mark out all the main features that you've got on your land. Contours of the hills and neighbouring woodland. If you're lucky, you might have a stream or a river. You want to design your wood so it corresponds to the hillocks that you have on the land, or maybe, for instance, develop a pond in the low-lying areas, and you can create that. So you've got your sketch map of the empty bit of land, and you can start planning the trees that you want to put in there. And then you've got to let your imagination flow. You're looking for a kind of broad mix of trees. You're going to be looking at colour and shape, but also height, speed of growth. Willows, probably the fastest growing tree, and they'll grow about 1 metre a year. Oaks will grow about at half that speed. And you've got the lower trees like hawthorn and holly. You've got things like wild cherry, which will produce fantastic blossom in the springtime. Crab apple, similarly. Often people, especially these days, are thinking in terms of native British trees, which actually means trees that existed in the country for 8,000 years or so. There are about 60 of trees and shrubs that come under that category, of which about 30 are useful for woodland planting generally. You don't have to choose native trees, and there are arboretums that introduce fantastically exotic trees. You're free to do anything you want, you really can. Most people, I think, when they're thinking about woodland, are thinking of broadleaf woodland, which is deciduous trees like oaks. In fact, you don't want to ignore conifers. Some people plant conifers early on in order to get some kind of height and growth and protection for other trees that will grow in their shade and in their shelter. The term nurse tree is used for them. They bring in a different look, a different shape, but also they bring in a different kind of biodiversity, and that's another aspect of thinking about design. They say an oak will support a community of animal life of about 2,500 species, and that's going from the acorns that squirrels and badgers will eat, right down to all the insects, the caterpillars, and all the birds that eat them. All trees do have their individual kind of biosphere. The book recommends a grid plan for planting trees because that's just a simpler way of putting in your mind's eye what you're setting out to achieve and to achieve a design of the woodland based on species. It's not unusual in a wood like this to have the main trees at least 3 metres, 10 metres apart. And in mature woodland you have about 200 trees an acre. Whereas when you're planting a woodland, you're looking at 800 trees. Which seems immensely dense, laid out often in a grid pattern. You'll have, they look like regiments of trees. But the reason why you're doing this is because one is that you're going to lose a fair number of trees to disease and to pests. The other reason you plant densely is because what you want is to get a canopy fairly early on, which is where the crowns of the trees start joining together, and that cuts out the light and changes the floor of the wood significantly. That's part of the unpredictability of it, really. I mean, you can design a woodland as much as you like, but the fact is, in the long term, you're going to have to live with what it wants to do, what it chooses to do, as some people have put it. You know, a tree chooses to grow, and you're blessed by that. This book is out now, for sale, available online.